All right, Vinland Saga Season 2, Episode 2 is called Keital's Farm, and that is essentially the idea of this episode. We get introduced to Keital himself. We got introduced to him at the end of the last episode, but this is the first episode where you really get a sense of his personality, which I always thought was very amusing because of where he eventually ends up in the manga. Because when you first meet Keital, you kind of think that he's like a pretty reasonable, down to earth dude because he brings Einar over to Thorfin, says, all right, this is going to be your patch of my land. Basically, what you're going to do is just clear out all the trees, you're going to chop them all down, get rid of them, and then you're going to turn this into a new wheat field. That is definitely the mission of what he wants them to do. He's like, but I'm basically just kind of giving you this area. You guys can do that. And at the end of it, when I feel like you've kind of earned back the price that I paid for you, then I will give you your freedom. So essentially, you just have this one main task to do. After about the length of time it's going to take you to do it, maybe 2-3 years, something like that. Afterwards, I'll give you your freedom. How does that sound? And Einar's like, that's amazing, you know? Einar has this great sort of, I wouldn't say naive in particular because Einar is smart enough to understand what a slave is. He's smart enough to understand the situation he's in. But hearing that and hearing, of all the potential slave owners you could possibly wind up under, to be underneath a guy that says literally, you have this job to do. Once you complete it, I'll give you your freedom. That is extremely inspiring, and that gives him the hope that he needs in order to come at this in a positive way. And also, if you think about it from like a manipulation tactic, it's a really good thing to tell your slaves in order to get them to do what you want also. Not that I don't think Kaito was genuine about that in particular, but he definitely undersold the amount of labor and intensity and malnourishment that his slaves was eventually going to encounter during this. But you can see Einar's kind of hopefulness through it and his eagerness to get the job done and to do the job right so that that can happen, as opposed to Thorfin, who has been here for a while, that's been clearing out these trees and is just absolutely broken. We do get dialogue from Thorfin in this episode, which was great, and it pretty much followed the manga exact. There wasn't really, at least I couldn't tell, I don't think there was any added anime only material in this episode. I don't think there was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure there wasn't. But we do get a sense of Thorfin's character. And what I love so much about Vinland Saga, and this arc in particular, is that every arc of Vinland Saga, we're in a different stage of Thorfin's life. Things have changed. There's been a little bit of a time skip. And so Thorfin is broken. Everything was taken away from him. He has, he does have family, but who knows? It's out there in Iceland somewhere. He can't get to it. He's been a slave. His whole mercenary band is gone. His quest for vengeance was taken away from him. And so he has nothing, and he really doesn't care about his life at this point. And I think in the next episode, by the way, next episode is called Snake. Man, I won't spoil it for anime onlys, but I can't wait for Snake, baby. But anyways, you see that kind of brokenness, that he doesn't really care what happens to him. He doesn't really care that he gets a little abused by the farmhands. He doesn't really care about how much work he has to do. He's ultimately kind of just waiting to die, kind of just going through the motions and just does not give a shit about life anymore. So you have that parallel between the two characters. You have Einar, who's hopeful about the future. He knows he's in a horrible situation, but he's hoping that at some point he'll be able to rise above and get out of it. And then you have Thorfin, who is completely given in to the darkness and just does not care what happens to him whatsoever. And you see that in how they handle their work as well. Thorfin going through the motions. Einar is a little bit too eager, a little bit too eager with what he's doing, but Thorfin is sort of just robotic in the way that he's chopping down trees and everything. And I really like the scene where it showed Thorfin and Einar taking care of one of the trees after it was chopped down. Not just because it shows them kind of working together and putting their power together, not just because it shows the intensity of the labor that they have to go through, and that you're expecting two men to cut down all of these trees, move all of the trees, and be able to turn this into a field where you can actually grow plentiful food. Insane. Okay, insane, without the proper tools to do it either. They're doing it by hand, by just chopping trees down with axes, and have one horse to kind of move the plow, to move the tree, away from the area. Ridiculous. But I liked that sort of unification that they had while doing it. Even though they're coming at it from different perspectives, they're hoping to get different things out of it. Is that it is a job that you need to work together. And it's the beginning theme of how difficult it is to cultivate and create, as opposed to how easy it is to destroy and to kill. And so we've moved into a different paradigm for Thorfin that will ultimately kind of play into the themes of the season overall. But I also like just getting a chance to see Keital's farm. I mean, that was the title of the episode, and I'm a big fan of when it comes to movies or TV shows, storytelling, whatever, when it comes to a visual medium, I like to have a sense of space. And what I mean by that is I like really wide shots. I like to be able to see where the characters are in relation to each other. Like, where is this patch of forest that Thorfin's working on, as opposed to the open field of wheat where Keital was, as opposed to where Keital lives, as opposed to, I want to know the layout of this farm. And we sort of get it a little bit. We don't really get a whole lot of it, but we get it a little bit. We see Thorfin and Einar walking. We are introduced to Arnheid, even though she doesn't have any dialogue, so Einar sees Arnheid and he's immediately just kind of like taken aback by how beautiful she is. She's the reason that he doesn't complain about the farmhands. He kind of gets distracted, understandably so, and we get to see that, and then we get to see this relationship between Keital and Olmar, and I love this. I thought this was fantastic. I bet the voice actors were having a ball while doing this. Like, regardless of that, like the theme of this season is slavery, this episode was really funny. Like, there was a lot of humor in this episode because you have like the 17-year-old Olmar who doesn't want to work on the farm, and he's like using the scythe wrong, or the sickle wrong. What was he using? What was the tool that he was using? Someone correct me. And you have Keital yelling at him like, I've told you a million times, you do it like this. And, you have that humor kind of going back and forth, which I thought was great. It made it really feel like that family dynamic, like a father that's just frustrated with his kid, and a kid that's like, shut up, old man, I don't want to do this, I want to go do something for myself, and he can't even take the sword out of the sheath, and he's just like trying and struggling with it, and it's like, it was just perfect, man. And then it goes even further when Olmar, he's talking to the one girl, and then her parents are so fucking weird, but like her parents are literally like outside listening, and they're like, yes, if she fucks him, then she could get related to this family and we'll be part of this giant farm, and we'll be well taken care of, which is so funny. I mean it's true shit, it's real shit. Like, you'd want to have your daughter married off into a wealthy family, but just the fact that the father is literally listening to like make sure that his daughter has sex with Olmar, ridiculous. And then we get the drunk farmhands. We get Fox is the skinny guy. I forget the bigger guy's name. And they're drunk and they're just wandering through the field, and they see Olmar and they're like, hey buddy, you're the guy. You're Keital's kid. What's going on? And just their drunk voice. I can't wait to hear it in English dub too, just because it just sounded really funny. I loved it, man. So that was great. And episode, of course, ends with Einar and Thorfin trying to get some sleep within the one of the barns, and Einar's just talking about how he hates warriors, basically, like the people that allowed him to get into this position, and how they're all animals, and that he watched them attack his village multiple times. Last episode expanded on his mother and sister being killed, and so he has this visceral hatred against, I would say, not just warriors too, but just unfairness. Like the idea that Einar as a slave feels like he's being treated unjust and wants to say something about it. You are a slave. You are being treated unjust. He doesn't quite, like, he's such a good-natured person that he feels like it's a tit-for-tat situation. Like, we are doing this thing for you, then we be compensated, and he knows he's not getting compensated with money, but he knows that he can earn his freedom, and he was expecting food. I mean, if you're trying to nourish people that are meant to cut down this many trees, you think you would want to give them good food, not like half a potato. So like he's and he doesn't like want to deal with the harassment from the farmhands and stuff like that. Like, he hasn't quite grasped his situation as well, and I think a lot of that is because Keital's introduction and what kind of a person Keital makes himself look like he is, that Einar even believes that he could possibly be treated fairly here, right? Also, with his discouragement towards warriors and Thorfin just listening to it, and Einar knows nothing about Thorfin. He doesn't understand why Thorfin doesn't care that he's being treated like shit, and they have such a combative, personality traits back and forth, which is part of what makes their dynamic so good. But I do love the ending of this episode with Thorfin just trying to sleep and listening to Einar talk about how he hates warriors and the people that took everything away from him, and Thorfin just realizing that like he spent 10 years of his life just doing that, and ultimately nothing became of it because everything that he wanted to do out of it was taken away. And so he's there, he's broken, he's depressed, and he just really doesn't give a shit what happens to him, which is going to lead into the next episode, which I am so excited about. I'm so excited about the next episode. I'm going to keep these videos as spoiler free for anime onlys as I can, just because I don't want to ruin anything for you. And I'm trying to more compare it to the manga, as also just give you a generalized review. So, but that does cut down on theories, because I can't really theorize what's going to happen next, because I know what's going to happen next. But and I'm excited. Next episode is going to be a baller, dude. I can't wait. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think of Vinland Saga Episode 2, Keital's Farm, down below, if you're excited for next week. Also, if you're new here, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I cover Vinland Saga, the anime, and the manga. I cover the new chapters as well. So if you're a Vinland Saga fan, welcome. Happy to have you here. If you want to support the channel on that deeper level, I do have a Patreon, merch store, and channel memberships turned on if you would like to participate in that. Other than that, guys, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll talk to you next time.